Noon here in Goshen, Indiana. Thank you for joining us for Tech Tips Live. I've got Chris Bowman here with me.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Today we're going to be looking more at alerts and a couple slides here. I guess to introduce myself, Phil Mason. The host for today, going to give a short introduction, then Chris is going to get us into the nuts and bolts of real-time alerts and all the different options that exist out there for GainSeeker users. So we have a situation where there are many different levels of people who have can have access to GainSeeker data from the shop floor operator, quality managers, quality engineers, plant management, facility management, and then we also have, we work with a lot of businesses where you have many locations, and so we have corporate management wanting to take peeks and views into data. And so it's really important that makes sense for all those different levels. You don't want to overwhelm people especially at higher levels with things that should go to the shop floor, or as Chris and I talked about, you also don't want to be overwhelming your shop floor operators with perhaps alerts that they haven't been properly trained on how to deal with. So we'll talk a little bit about how to get those alerts to the right people. And when it comes to alerts, it is a balancing act. Of what you need to know, and also a person's ability to impact it. I talked about that a little bit. So you want to be getting the right information to the right people. And there are some alerts that demand or really need immediate action. There are other alerts that are more part of a big picture overview. And we'll look at some of those and how you might fashion some of your alerts in that way. So how do we really bring this all about? You know, GainSeeker alerts, they're a powerful method of expanding the reach of Seeker for that operational data, getting it to the people who really need it. We can direct alerts to the right audience, and they can be delivered to that audience in an appropriate format, which is really a very important thing to have happen. So I'm going to turn control of the presentation over to Chris here now and let him take it over. You're the presenter now, Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a new experience for me running Tech Tips Lives, so hope you bear with me if necessary. Right now we're talking about the real-time alerts, and when I would think of this, I think about getting the right data to the right people.
You're not shared, Chris.
Oh, thank you.
So up at the top of the screen, it should. Might need to go back. Yeah, here.
Okay, I was going to ask if everyone could see my screen now, but you couldn't answer. Okay, we're talking about real-time alerts, getting the data where it needs to be, when it needs to be there. Now, to understand why we're concerned with getting data to people in real time, I've got to go back and talk a little bit about the different types of variation and whatnot. For those of you who are already very familiar with this, I apologize for the review. But there are all types of variation can be categorized as either common cause or special cause. Special cause is where you really need to know about it real time, or as near real time as you can get. The reason that you want to get special time variation available in real time is so you can take the appropriate action, and those are time sensitive. Now, how do you know when you do have special cause variation? That would be the first question. Special cause variation will be revealed when it occurs by having either a shift in the mean, which would be this bottom chart, that would be an example, or a shift in the variation. The reason we want to know about this in real time is if our process is moving in undesirable direction, we want to stop it and get it back to our normal process right away. You do that by removing the special cause. The other possible, though much rarer scenario, is if something has changed that causes your process to improve. That does occasionally happen, and that often is even more important to get that information in real time, because special cause are often temporary, and you need to get down there, figure out what it is so you can make it part of your normal process. We're discussing responses to special cause variation or common cause variation. It's important to remember what the appropriate responses are because they are different. The appropriate response to special cause variation is most definitely to not change the system. You want to basically eliminate the special cause. Sometimes special cause can't be eliminated, but you also, if that's the case, you still want to identify it so you know not to try and take corrective action, because that will constitute tampering and just increase the variation in your process. These are the various control chart signals that GainSeeker can sound alarms on. Not everyone will be familiar with all of these, so I'll kind of talk about them a little bit and give you some examples of what they look like. However, a good way to before we do that, let's talk about how you set them up. This is the location in setting up GainSeeker standards where you turn on or off the real-time alarms. You can turn individual standard by standard basis. You can select exactly which real-time alarms you want to turn on and which ones you don't. We'll talk about that a bit later. These real-time alarms, having a point above or below the range control limits, though you usually, unless you have a larger subgroup size, will not have a lower control limit, run above or below the mean on the R-bar chart or the MR chart if it's a moving range chart, and a trend increasing or decreasing again on the range chart. These are all signs that you have had a change in your process variation, which was triggered by special cause. These alarms are the ones that will indicate that you had a shift in your mean, which more often, if your X bar is above or below the control limits, you got runs or trends on the X bar chart, and the zone violations. We'll see what those are because they're not familiar to everyone. And lastly, we also give you the option for a Q-sum failure. A Q-sum is a type of control chart which is used almost exclusively by the food industry and is designed to detect very small shifts in the mean. Violations are really simple to spot on a control chart. You've got a point above or below the control limits. Straightforward. Those will occasionally happen even if you don't have special cause. You will sometimes get false alarms, but they're rare. A run is a series of points in a row above or below the mean. This is indicated by either 6, 7, or 8 points, which you can set up in GainSeeker how sensitive you want this particular real-time alarm to be. Obviously, 6 points in a row is going to be the least sensitive. 8 points in a row is going to be the most sensitive. Sorry. And again, trends are where you have 6, 7, or 8 points in a row moving in one direction. Okay. Actually, it's not ever moving in the other direction. If you have, like in this case, if these 2 points were exactly equal, it would still constitute part of a trend. Zone violations are where you have either 2 of 3 or 4 or 5 points all on one side of the mean. And if it's the 2 of 3, these are outside of 2 standard deviations, whereas this one is outside of 1. 4 of 5 is the same thing, but they're saying 4 or 5 are outside of 1 standard deviation. So what types of things can generate real-time alarms? Talk about how to communicate this with people. One of the ways, and the primary way that you will probably be using to communicate real-time alarms to higher levels would be some type of dashboard. Now, in this particular case, I've built a dashboard for all the data standards, all the standards that are passing the filter I set up. I'm showing how many data points there are in a certain time period, how many points had failures, now, and how many points were out of spec, and when was the most recent data point. And I'm also giving you a chart. As you can see, this type of chart allows you to add customizable colors. The most important things jump out at you right away. You also have immediate access to underlying data. I'll show you that in just a moment. One of the things that we have worked with for some customers is where, okay, we have a real-time alarm. You want not only the operator to immediately enter what information they have happened, but a lot of times you may want an engineer, a supervisor, one to go back in and review it and probably sign off on it to some extent. One of the things you can do with a dashboard of this type is have a filter that would say display all of the data records where we have an event set, but we do not have, let's say, the action taken and the cause values in the data in the note. Then if someone goes in and pulls up the data, enter the cause and the action taken, it would disappear from the dashboard, indicating that someone had basically closed the loop on that particular situation. The ways that I was saying is this dashboard will give immediate access to the underlying data. Is behind every one of these squares, there is a data set. If you right-click on one of these squares, you can click View Failure Data, or just view the raw data, or all the data, or you can actually build a chart. So if you see something that's very concerning and you want to look at a control chart beyond this simple small chart that we added to the dashboard, you could just click on Chart, then click Control Chart, the chart available. If you wanted to be able to edit the data, you could click on View Data and then click and say Edit Data. Two separate data collection systems running right now. We have the legacy system of templates, which a lot of our customers are using, and we also have the new data collection, the .NET version, which is inspections. Talking about templates here for just a minute, I want to talk about how to create real-time alarms in templates. The first thing is setting up just those turning on the alarms, which will usually create real-time failure notes. The real-time failure note will have the operator generate or the automatically generated note up here, and the operator has the opportunity to enter their own freestyle note. In addition to entering their freestyle note, we have the event, cause, and action taken fields, provided they have the rights to set those. You can also, if you like, configure a template to require users to enter either an operator note, an event, cause, action taken, or at least one of them, pretty much any combination of that scenario. In addition to the real-time alarm note, we also have what we call the feedback commands. These are set up on an individual row in a template, a code that you've added that will be executed only if the corresponding type of failure occurs. Now, if I put a code here in this third cell, this code would be executed if and only if there was a gate failure. Any type of gate failure. That would be the X bar is above the upper gate, the X bar is below the lower gate, the R bar, the range is above the upper gate or lower gate. I clicked on the gate tab, I could then go in and have different commands executed, each of those 4 different scenarios. And to remember when you're setting this up is this code will be executed immediately when you complete the subgroup. Actually, depending upon your configuration settings, it could even be executed every time you complete a single data cell. But that's something you need to keep in mind. If you're in data entry process, allows the operator to review the data and correct it before they submit it. That's something you have to keep in mind. One of the things that you can do with this type of command is either directly or indirectly send an email. There is a GainSeeker email command. Talking about inspections, because that's where everybody is moving to, at least sometime in the future. One of the things that you can do in an inspection is require a note. The note doesn't pop up automatically, but it doesn't matter if you require the note. They cannot submit and save the data until they pop up this screen and enter it. As with templates, you can require the operator to fill in all or part of these values here. In addition to that, you can create messages that appear on the screen. That could be either just a pop-up, or they can appear at the bottom of your screen between the cancel and submit button. You can set up the inspection so that if there were any failures, when they go back to the list of sub-inspections, those sub-inspections will show up in red. All things that are giving different types of feedback to the operator.
So again, these Chris, like you're saying, with both the templates and the inspection, this tends to be, these solutions are more down on the operator, or
yes,
like quality manager, quality engineer, day-to-day operations people.
Right. Though, yeah, they're always going to be the day-to-day operations people. The people at the higher levels, the plant management and corporate management at the very least, it's very unlikely that they're going to want to get an email because there's something happened on a floor.
Right.
They would probably get most of their information through dashboards.
Yep. Okay, great.
Okay. Those of you who've looked at inspections, these are some of the properties where you can turn this on and off. For example, this forced note can be set either at the sub-inspection level or at an individual numeric input level. And you can set that to require any portion of the note to be completed or all of it completed, whatever variation you want. Another thing that becomes very important is this filter command. By the way, this filter command is something that we are adding in version 9.3. I'm sorry, if you go and look at your current version right now today, you will not have that. But it is due out here in December, and once you upgrade, you will have this. This allows you to filter the data set that will be displayed in the side panel and to have the real-time alarms based upon that filtered data set,
okay,
which can be very, very important.
So you're giving them a little peek behind the curtain. Is that it, Chris?
Yeah. There were some things coming out in 9.3 that I really wanted to share with people.
All right. Okay, Byron was dropping hints last month too.
Send RTF email is there. And it is a very nice piece of functionality. If you just turn that on, you can get the software to automatically send an email if there's a failure for this particular numeric input. That's really great. You can actually get it to also include a copy of the chart. We do have a few issues with that we are working on getting fixed, but right now the chart that they attach would not have the most recent data point. That's the value to that. Sorry, but as always, I feel my job is to get you the maximum benefit from the software, which includes dealing with you when there are things that we need to improve. That is most definitely in the works, but it's not there yet. One thing that could be a little bit of a problem, and I'll cover this a little bit later, is this is going to send a separate email for every numeric input. That can be a little bit of overkill sometimes. Is how you can require notes to be completed by the operator when they pop up. It allows you to force that they type something in into the open field, the open note field, or down here they can require any or all of these, or if they click this button, they will be required to enter at least one, but not, it could be any one. That completes those screens. I do have a couple things I wanted to share with you.
All right. Well, Chris, gets those next screens up, and you'll have to go do the share again, Chris, because all I'm seeing is your mouse moving around. If you have a question for Chris, we've got about 9 minutes left. So I'll give Chris a couple minutes to actually show you some things in the software. But if you've got a question, feel free to hit your Q&A and pop in your question there, and we will try and get those on the air here as we keep going. All right, I see your screen now, Chris. Go ahead.
Okay. As I said, one of the drawbacks to the auto send RTFs is it does send a single email for each and every numeric input that has a failure, which means if this was the data set, for example, where I've got 4 numeric inputs, all of which have multiple real-time failures, I'm going to send, if you turn that property on, I'm going to send 4 separate emails. Okay.
So it could get a little overwhelming.
Absolutely. So what I've done is I've written a small script, and if anyone's interested, I'd be happy to send that script to them. I'm not going to go over and discuss the script in detail, but I've sent a script that will go ahead and send one email with messages about all 4 numeric inputs, or more correctly, numeric input in this sub-inspection had a failure.
Okay.
If I go ahead and share, is the email that was generated where it basically says, hey, real-time failures occurred for the following standards, and it lists each of the standards that had a failure and what was the real-time alarm generated for those.
Excellent.
So, and then probably in 9.4, we'll be able to attach the charts, including the most recent data point. That was the last thing I had on my list that I wanted to show. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it back over to Phil and respond to any questions that you have for either Phil or I.
Excellent. Let's see. So on it just a little bit, Chris. We have one question here, and your little script there with email showed a little bit what can happen when you have too many alerts. But the first question is, we turned it on, we were overwhelmed with alerts. What are your kind of tips there for how people scale into it? And it can seem like, I think it might seem like an all or nothing sometimes. So how do people balance that?
Okay, well, what I normally tell customers when I'm talking about this is, first of all, you need to consider your audience. If the operators on the floor have not been trained and do not know what a message of X bar above control, the upper control limit means, and you're not expecting them to take any action, then you probably don't want to turn that alarm on, or you don't want to note pop up and require them to answer anything, because you're basically just training them to ignore the alarms. So you really want to be careful about turning on the alarms, or at least displaying the notes on the alarms. The other thing is, as I showed in this slide about the standard, you can turn on a standard by standard basis exactly what alarms you want turned on. So for example, if it's a brand new system and the operators don't really understand anything about special cause versus common cause, they really have been trained to respond to as if they're out of spec, start off turning on just the spec limits. Of course, that's just product control, not process control.
Right.
And I assume that you would want to progress past that, but you start off with that so you're not confusing the operators and deluging them with alerts that they don't know how to deal with.
Right. So some of the power here is that at the standard level, we can be setting it at the standard level. And so again, people can be selective.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that sometimes with software, we all get annoyed because there's some universal setting that, does everything. And we have not done that. We want it on that case by case for that operational data. And then as we've talked about, we're also going to be pushing higher level summary data, more like dashboards and things.
Yes.
But any advice or tips there on getting the right data to the dashboards, or any thoughts there? I know that's a big question, but.
Well, first of all, I would say, when I'm designing a dashboard, the first question is always the audience. What do they need to know? Example, if you have a quality engineer who's only responsible for the processes in a certain area, then I would use a filter to restrict the data being displayed on the dashboard to only the standards or only the data that was part of that department. Or that could be based upon the line or a product data, a product stream. The important thing is to give them the data concisely and clearly as possible. You don't want information that they need to be lost in noise or background information.
Okay.
So that would be the first step. The other steps are, I mean, again, it's like, okay, who's the audience? So what data do they need to see, and what's really important for them to know to make the appropriate actions and decisions that they need to make. That's one of the reasons why I like those real-time failure dashboards, because they tell you something happened that may be special cause, or it may be something that isn't even special cause, but it's something that you need to take an action about. But while the high-level dashboard is giving you an alert that this happened, also giving you that immediate access to the underlying data.
Okay, great. All right, fantastic. Well, we are about out of time. So I think, unless we get any late comers in here, we're going to wrap it up. As you see there, our next Tech Tips Live is October 17th. We're going to be talking about usage statistics, and we have been collecting from users who have opted in anonymous statistics about what parts of the program you're using. And we are going to present some information about what, how users are using the software. I think we'll have some tips about where we might see some places where people could benefit from using another avenue or some other features, maybe some new ones. We've seen some places where people are using some legacy parts of the application where we have new improved functionality that they may not be familiar with. So next month, we'll be looking at usage statistics, and we will be, the recording of this will be up in about a week on the website, on the Tech Tips Live area, and also in our YouTube channel. So if you want to come back or pass this along to someone else in your company so that they could learn a little bit more about the alerts. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Chris, for being our technical resource today. I think we've given people a lot of great information and can see some of the power of what they can do with GainSeeker alerts. All right, have a great Thursday, everybody.
If anyone would like to see that, that inspection script I created to send emails, support@hertzler.com and request the examples inspection script for sending emails.
Awesome, fantastic. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.